This is HSC Option 2, Sport and Physical Activity in Australian Society. We're up to the fourth and final key idea. This is the key idea here. What are the relationships between sport, physical activity and gender? And this is the first dot point. Sport is a traditionally male domain, and for this recording we're focusing on the left-hand side of the syllabus and these 4 dash points. Now, as a bit of an overview of the actual dot point itself, 19th century sport, as came up in an earlier dot point, it was just all about the males and sport. Women were just considered spectators. Today, female sport has made dramatic progress. However, there's still a pretty strong argument that it's still not close to being equal of male sport, and we'll talk about that in some of the upcoming slides. But just briefly, in most sports, females still receive far less prize money than their male counterparts, certainly less media coverage, and in some instances, females receive negative criticism for playing some sports, such as boxing. The first dash point we have here in red, sport and the construction of masculinity and femininity. A quick look at what that actually means. To be masculine or masculinity means a set of qualities or roles that are typical of being a man. And of course, the opposite applies for femininity, a set of qualities or roles that are typical of being a woman. So when it comes to sport itself, some of the qualities that are considered important in sport are courage, power, and also determination. Now, if you were to reverse that and have a look at some of the qualities that are considered not important in sport, you would say that being soft, being caring and compassionate are 3 qualities that are not high up on the list as being important in sport. Now, unfortunately, when it comes to females in sport, the stereotypical qualities of what it means to be masculine and feminine um, have defined these in large roles. So when it comes to being a female, society has set this framework that to be a female for generations now, you have to be, you would have displayed qualities such as being compassionate and caring. Well, for being a man, you would have been more displaying some of these qualities and better fitted into the sports environment. It certainly is changing, however, it's now becoming more commonplace for women to be linked to showing these qualities such as courage and determination. But I think there's still a long way to go until society ranks females alongside males when it comes to playing sport, unfortunately. Now, the media also, in some instances, actually, when women do show some of the same characteristics and qualities as what their male counterparts do, they get frowned upon. So an example would be Australian tennis player Sam Stosur. She's a winner of a Grand Slam tournament. She's obviously copped some criticism in the past for photos such as this, which portrays her as certainly very fit and fantastic athlete. And a lot of people in the media have criticised her for perhaps being a little bit too masculine and therefore I guess you could say not displaying typical female qualities. Now, these qualities are what is considered to be masculine and feminine, sometimes carry through from a strong influence of family tradition, where for boys in particular, playing sports, contact sports such as rugby league are looked upon favourably, while less contact sports and even in some instances activities such as dancing are particularly frowned upon in some family traditions. So there's a bit of a summary of this actual dash point. Back in the 19th century, sport demonstrated what it meant to be masculine and feminine. It's certainly changing in society today, that it's now becoming more acceptable for women to display what was once considered typical male qualities. But as the Sam Stosur example shows, there's still some way to go before females could be considered to be on equal footing with men. Now, the next dash point is implications for participation. So what are these stereotypical qualities of what it means to be masculine and feminine? What sort of implications does that have for participation in sport and physical activity? Because there are differences in participation rates between boys and girls, particularly playing organised team sports. And there could be a wide range of different reasons for that. As on the previous slide suggested, family values is certainly one. Mixed PE classes in school where boys tend to dominate is another reason. And also girls probably have to deal with more body image reasons that stop and prevent many of them getting involved in physical activity. Again, that could be contributed largely to the way media has a role in about constructing what it means to be having the ideal body, and females obviously suffer from that. There's also some cultural reasons for the difference in participation. In many cultures, female participation in sport is frowned upon, but again, on a real positive note, that is changing. Um, and there's certainly been some great examples in Australia recently where females from the Islamic faith have got into sports that were once considered traditionally solely the domain of males. Role models are incredibly important in providing um, motivation for females to participate in sport. Some examples here are Kathy Freeman. She's been a fantastic role model, not only for females as a whole, but also probably more particularly female Indigenous athletes. And Lane Beachley, who's a multiple world champion on the surfing tour. She's another fantastic ambassador for female sport. The next dash point here, we've got sponsorship, policy and resourcing. Now, because sport has been traditionally a male domain and they dominate the media airways, they also dominate sponsorship. And when it comes to the big sports in particular, male sports have very little trouble receiving sponsorship while their female counterparts struggle. The main reason for this is that the males dominate sports coverage on TV. I think it's almost at the ratio of about 9-1. So companies are extremely aware that to get value for their sponsorship dollar, their company has to be being seen, particularly on free-to-air TV. So in the case of the NRL, companies such as NRMA with the Broncos and JCar with the Bulldogs, they're getting regular exposure on TV as opposed to companies who sponsor female sports who receive very little media exposure. Success at recent Olympic Games for some of our female athletes have seen a greater number of female athletes receiving sponsorship deals. But unfortunately, what you'll see in many of these cases is they're forced into doing shots that take them out of their athletic domain and being forced to do, I guess, glamour type shots, which is the case here with Stephanie Rice. There is slow change gradually happening as they start to receive some media exposure. Some of Australia's leading female sporting teams, such as the cricket team, are receiving some positive sponsorship deals, such as the Australian cricket team with the Commonwealth Bank, as they slowly start to gain a higher media profile because of their success on the field. Sponsorship of female teams such as the ANZ Netball Championship has led to the possibility of this one day becoming a full-time professional sport. Some of these players in the netball competition are becoming close to full-time athletes because of the money that's coming into their sport through sponsorship. But compared to their male counterparts, they've still got a long way to go. Now here's a bit of a graph which shows how male participation and female participation has changed over the years. If you have a look at the very first Olympics back in 1896, it had 100% male participation. There were no females participated at the Olympics at all. Moving on 4 years, women got 0.5% of the population, 1920, 5%. And now you can see right up until the 2008 Beijing Olympics, where it was 55% to 45%. So there's been some dramatic improvements over the years, but still there is a difference. And one of the things that has helped close the gap has the IOC, the Olympic movement, who's in charge of running the Olympics, had put some policy in place to try and increase and encourage countries to send more female participants to the Olympics. So in a lot of countries, governments are forced into creating some policy to help better promote female sport and try and even up the participation rates. This final dash point, the role of the media in constructing meanings around femininity and masculinity in sport. The media coverage given to sport today just seems to still back up the stereotypical ideas of what was happening in the 1900s about what it means to be masculine and what it means to be feminine. As discussed in one of the previous dash point, you can see this in the type of language and images that are used. With the girls swim team, they use language like this, girls, and when they talk about the male team, they'll use the word men. So it's a subtle type of way the media uses, but it's pretty distinct when we refer about our leading athletes as girls as opposed to the guys being men. We can talk about the language that's used to describe men's sport as words such as battle, tough, aggressive, and courage. When you have a look at the language often used to describe women's sport, stunner, sizzling, and babes is some of the more common type of language that you see used. The images you often see portrayed in the media as well, the men who are you actually see images of them in action, sort of the hot, sweaty look there displayed by Andy Roddick, as opposed to often this type of thing which you see with the female imagery, which is more focusing on their body type.